Hey everyone! We are approaching the 7th year of the Switch. We are somewhat nearing the end of the 6th year. 7th year is coming up in March. And there's been a lot of speculation and discussion about the next system, and that's been done to death. There's so little more we can say about that. But with the last Direct, I don't think I actually got the impression that this is a system being phased out. Like, if we compare it to other Nintendo systems, like the 3DS, the Wii U, the Wii, the DS, they sort of dwindled towards the end of their life. They would start putting their resources into the next system, but we are getting a freaking 2D Mario game in mere months. And 2D Mario has always been bigger than 3D Mario. There's one instance it wasn't, and it was by 80,000 units, and that was on the Wii U, which most casual people did not own. 3D World was 80,000 ahead of New Super Mario Bros. U. But even on the Switch, if you compare the ports, like New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe sold 15 million. 3D World sold 10 million, which is an outrageously better game.
Yeah.
But that's just the power of 2D Mario. And you can see most of us right now. It's me, John Carra. We've also got Ash Paulson, and we've got Daniel Albert too. Steve Bowling is here as well.
Hello.
There he is.
Hey.
I'm invisible.
He's invisible, yeah.
Voice of Godding it today.
But yeah, the whole reason I'm sort of feeling that maybe Switch has more life in it, it largely hinges on 2D Mario. Because I think it would be very strange to just put it out there and then move on. Because 2D Mario, it sells well, but it sells well over time. Like, it will most likely have a very good launch, but it's the kind of game that continuously sells. You pick up a system, you pick up 2D Mario.
Right.
So I think it'd be so odd to launch that months before a successor, because I think people are expecting it to be announced this year and released next year. I think that would just cut the legs off 2D Mario. And if you were to have had it ready by now, wouldn't you just save it for the next one? It's such an odd case. And also, we had Tears of the Kingdom recently. We've got Pikmin 4, and the year before we had Splatoon 3 and Xenoblade 3. It doesn't feel like the resources from these studios are being held back right now. I think the only obvious ones are 3D Mario and Mario Kart, which obviously are being held back for the next system. But like Splatoon and 2D Mario and Pikmin and Xenoblade, they've just put all those out there, which I find befuddling. But I'll stop talking. What are you guys thinking right now? Ash, what are you feeling about the landscape when it comes to what's coming up?
I'm definitely kind of seeing what you're talking about, how, you could kind of see it coming with other Nintendo hardware. You could kind of feel the end coming. You could see their resources being, pushed into what's next. And I'm not seeing that yet with the Switch, like you said, John. The 2D Mario angle is interesting, because I think one thing that it could potentially point to, and I think is a pretty strong sign, that the Switch's successor is hopefully likely to have, some element of backwards compatibility, because we are obviously closer to the end of the Switch's life than the beginning. There's no doubt about that, much closer. But I agree with you. It makes so little sense to release a 2D Mario when that's such a big deal, and then just move on to the next thing in less than a year, right? So it seems to me to be the kind of thing where, as little sense as that makes, I can also see that being an indicator that they're planning for the successor to have backwards compatibility, so as not to lose the value of releasing something like Wonder so late in the Switch's life.
It would be... I can't even describe how bad it would be if there's no backwards compatibility. It would be horrifying.
Awful. Yeah, it's got to have it.
But Steve, I know you're quite strongly for a successor coming soon, so what are your thoughts right now after seeing 2D Mario just suddenly appear?
First off, I do think my expectations have changed somewhat, but not as drastically as one might think. I don't think we're seeing an announcement even of a new Switch this year anymore. If you had asked me, a week ago, I would have said probably after the holiday rush, like in late November or December or something. Now I'm thinking it's early next year at best that we see the announcement of a Switch successor. However, I don't think that we're getting. I still don't think that this Switch is going to go through year 8. I think that Nintendo, outside of these new game announcements, Nintendo has also publicly discussed their flagging confidence in the ability of this current iteration of the Switch to sell. What this has done for me is it's given me more security in the idea that Nintendo will be introducing a new Switch and not just a totally new concept.
Yeah.
So I don't think we're getting, if you had asked me again a week ago, I would have said, oh, well, Nintendo's going to Nintendo, and there's totally a chance that we just get something that throws the Switch concept away. I think seeing these games, I'm like, it has to be a Switch 2. It has to be a Switch 2 because Nintendo is still investing so heavily, while also out of the other side of their mouth saying Switch sales are slowing down, and we don't believe we're going to be able to hit as aggressive targets anymore with this hardware. So Nintendo knows that they've kind of sold a Switch to everybody who wants one. And that's a problem for any console manufacturer, because once you've hit that saturation point where everybody who wanted to jump on board with this has it, that's when you need to get something new out the door, so that those people who have had that device for 7+ years now have something that they can look at and be like, okay, I got my $300 worth. Give me the next item,
Yeah.
And I think the way, but the confidence in the library to me says like, okay, Nintendo has to know that these are essentially cross-generational titles. So Super Mario Wonder, this new Princess Peach game, which we don't even have a release window for other than nebulously
We know
next year.
nothing. Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes sense for them to be talking about stuff in those vague of terms on a console this old if the next console will just play them.
Yeah.
Daniel, we've gone for a while. Let's let you have a word in. What are you thinking? What do you feel?
Yeah, Nintendo's in such a unique situation as far as like their scheduling. There are a lot of weird factors came into this because they're with a console that is extremely successful. They've never really been in this situation where they've carried this kind of momentum throughout pretty much the entire lifespan of a home console, and just other things like COVID also affected production and just a whole bunch of things that we're still kind of crawling out of at this point in time. So there's games that are being released that with front-fronted schedules, like Xenoblade was planned to come out and then they pushed that ahead, and then you have like Fire Emblem Engage, which DLC just pushed out immediately after it released. So I think we're still kind of recovering from that, but that also contributes to the fact that the Switch does have a lot of life left still in it. Maybe if you had asked me earlier, like with Steve, I would have said that they were gonna at least hear it and have it released next year. But at this point, I'm not sure. I know they mentioned that they're not gonna have any console release this fiscal year. So I mean that's pretty obvious now with what you've seen in the Nintendo Direct. The Nintendo Direct was very telling as far as what we might expect for the future of Nintendo's consoles at this point. And yeah, we don't even have a title for the new Princess Peach game.
Yeah.
We don't know where in the world Metroid
Right.
Prime 4 is just nebulously out there.
I think that that Mario segment, I think was mostly sort of capture that post-Mario movie wonder, because there were weird announcements there. It's weird to announce a port of Luigi's Mansion 2 that's coming next year, but I think they haven't had a new Mario game since that movie. And like, if you look at any commercials, it's like, did you know you can still buy Odyssey and Mario Kart and Mario Maker? They have no new game to push. So I think that's kind of why they did that. But also, I look at that Princess Peach game, and we know nothing about it. This is a big, like, just jumping claim. But Luigi's Mansion 3 sold 13 million units. I think doing a spin-off with a Mario character as strong as the main cast, like Luigi, Peach, I'm looking at that game, which we know nothing about, and I'm thinking you're going to sell gangbusters.
Oh yeah, I think Princess Peach is going to do quite well. I just can't wait to find out more about it. I feel like we're going to see quite a few changes from what we saw in the Direct to whenever they show this game again. It felt very early.
Yeah, it felt way premature to not even have a title for it at this point. They just wanted to have a trifecta of Mario, Luigi, and Peach to announce for those that are coming off. This is the first presentation they've really had since the movie had released, so people are really like, there's a lot of people that are introduced to Mario now, considering it's like a billion box office hit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's just a lot of factors with this generation that we're not sure where they're going. Like things with NSO as well. Like I we're slowly dripping out N64 titles and Game Boy Advance titles, and it's like they can't be this slow with it without like thinking they're not going to carry that on to whatever console's coming on next as well. But yeah, it's really an unusual time for Nintendo considering how successful they've been, continuing to sell Switch, even though it is notably slowing down. But to consider where they're going, I'm not sure, man.
Yeah, and I don't want to pin any blame on any analysts or anything, because I think the Switch is very hard to predict. And so many analysts out there, and even some leakers out there, have been like, Tears of the Kingdom is the last big game. And then along comes 2D Mario, which is probably a bigger game. We're post Mario movie. Christmas this year, I think we're going to have a big uptick in hardware from kids who watched the Mario movie getting the first new Mario game since then. In no world is 2D Mario not a big game. And we never really know what's coming next year when it comes to Nintendo. Like, coming into this year, we didn't know what was coming up. Going into the previous year, we didn't know what was coming up. It's perfectly normal not to have a big 2024 schedule. But we are coming to a point where big Nintendo games have sort of gone through their cycle. Like Mario Party, with Super Mario Party, released in 2018. Superstars, 2021, 3-year gap. By 2024, another 3-year gap. It's kind of time for a new Mario Party.
Right.
Pokemon has been going on and off with like every 2 years there's a new mainline game. Not Gen 10, too early for that. But like Legends or a remake, that's kind of time for 2024. Like, it feels like there's big stuff that can come. And when it comes to like Mario Party and Pokemon, they're typically not like year one games for systems. With Game Freak, they did like Black and White as the 3DS launched. They did Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon a year after, like, as in like the end of the year for Switch. Like, it feels like those are still Switch games, I think. And they are big games. Super Mario Party sold like 15 million units. So when it comes to those analysts saying that there's no big Switch games after Tears of the Kingdom, I completely disagree.
I never really saw that angle in the first place. I just kind of never really fully believed that Tears of the Kingdom was going to be the last big Switch release, especially before we even know anything about the successor. That just never really just jived right with me. So I'm glad that we're seeing that bear out. But yeah, I mean, clearly the Switch has at least a little bit more gas left in its tank than some folks thought, and it's fascinating to see, because we have not ever really been in a position before with Nintendo hardware or gaming hardware, really, period, where, as you've said before, Steve, we're going to be entering its 8th year of life before too long, and that's especially for hardware that was considered fairly old at the time it launched. 8 years later, that's crazy that we're still on this same iteration.
Yeah.
I want to bring it back, though, to what John was saying. I agree that from a sales perspective, and to, in a smaller sense, a development effort perspective, that 2D Mario is huge. 2D Mario is going to perform very well, and likely will outperform Tears of the Kingdom. So I disagree with the idea that a 2D Mario and a game on the scale of Tears of the Kingdom represent like a similar development cost, like a similar development effort, right? Because Tears of the Kingdom is clearly like, it took them 6 years to make it with an already established world, right? Yeah. And Nintendo themselves seem to acknowledge that this game internally came at a higher cost, which is why they're charging more. And I do think that for the current version of the Switch, time is up for those, right? Like, we're not going to get another 7-year developments. I hope we don't.
Right.
Because, we'd be looking at like a 2030 release date at this point. But I think the difference is, and again, I keep kind of trying to hammer this point, is that I think Nintendo, obviously Nintendo knows what they're doing. We're still very much in the dark. But I feel like just the messaging around these games and the fact that they're willing to talk about very nebulous, undefined release dates for games, to me indicates that they're confident that the Switch in some shape or form will exist years down the road from now. Yeah. And I don't think there's a world in which 2 years from now, this current version of the Switch still exists, or that it's the primary focus for Nintendo. Right. So I have to think that they're looking at these and they're like, yeah, our next platform runs these, I would go as far as to say the same physical games will work on the next console.
I hope so.
Because Nintendo knows, we can package and ship these whenever, because they'll work on the next thing. Yeah.
Even if you have to change the form factor, because Switch cartridge sizes are kind of the limit with a lot of these games. Because going above 32 gigabytes is expensive. They tested 64 gigabyte carts, didn't happen. But if the next Switch has to change the format, just put a cartridge slot in. Just put another one. Put 2 in if you have to. Just let it play Switch games. But Steve, you also made an interesting point earlier about like saying how the next Switch could just be another Switch. And the Switch right now doesn't have competition. Like Steam Deck is the closest thing, and it is an enthusiast device. There's nothing competing with that sort of hybrid design. Switch technically is competing with PS5 and Series X, but in a bubble. They can easily just kind of move on and do another Switch, just sort of carry on that legacy, and it'll probably bring the swarms with it, because there's no one else doing that right now.
Totally. I mean, we've kind of mentioned this before, but I continue to believe that Nintendo, knowingly or not, have developed, or they know it now, but initially, knowingly or not, have developed themselves into a corner with the Switch. It is so hard to see them going to a new form factor and abandoning the handheld console hybrid that they kind of ushered in with the Switch, because it's been so popular. It's been such a great thing for consumers to be able to play at home or on the go, just seamlessly. And it's just, they're doing that and nobody else is, and I can't see why Nintendo would ever want to give up that very unique piece of the pie that no one else really has a claim to. It's all theirs. Yeah. And I mean, there's the Steam Deck, but that's appealing to a completely different crowd.
Right.
And I can't see why they would ever abandon that form factor for future hardware.
Agreed. Yeah. One thing that's really cool about this year too, though, is like a lot of the time third parties struggle with the Switch. Like Mortal Kombat 1 is somehow coming to the Switch. What's it going to look? Yeah. I don't know what that's going to look like. But this year, Switch is kind of getting that sort of DS, 3DS kind of third-party support, which is exactly what it needs. Like, we're getting Level 5 back with Professor Layton and Fantasy Life. We're getting Dragon Quest Monsters. We're getting stuff like I think like Sonic Superstars kind of fits that sort of meld. We're getting those sort of games that don't push for graphical fidelity, but just kind of have that easier-going AA sort of style. And
the second Ace Attorney collection.
Right, it's packed with that kind of stuff this year. And Level 5, we've got like Deca Police, Professor Layton, Fantasy Life, and we've got like there's a lot of stuff coming like that. It's packed, which that's kind of what I wanted out of the Switch's entire life. And it's nice seeing third parties ramp up with that now. But it's also kind of making me think, like, third parties obviously know what's going on, or have some kind of idea what's going on with the hardware cycle. They wouldn't just start making this high-budget Switch game right now if the next system is coming up. Like, a lot of that would be held back for that system. Obviously, Nintendo's very secretive. Not everybody's going to know. But the very close partners probably would. And stuff like Professor Layton, that is a big franchise. On the DS, that was one of the biggest series out there. And I think that can very easily sort of recapture that magic. So it's the pipeline that's got me. But the way Steve kind of rephrased it about saying it's not really the end of the Switch, but a continuation of the Switch, that may just sort of relinquish all those kind of concerns. Because maybe the Switch isn't on its way out and just never goes, but continues on in some other fashion.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's so many different titles that we're still awaiting that are in development that we don't know like how long this is going to take to develop. Yeah, we don't know if it's going to be for the Switch, or there's definitely developers developing now for whatever is beyond the Switch at this point in time. But there's such a library that we're still waiting for, that the people that are saying that Tears of the Kingdom was the last like big game, they're kind of just writing off the patterns of Zelda in other previous iterations, where Twilight Princess came to Wii but also GameCube, Breath of the Wild came to the Wii U but also the Switch. Just tailing in the life cycle of one and then starting another. But it's a different situation in this case, because we're still just, if it was a different situation, I wonder if they would have, if the Switch wasn't as popular as it was, if towards the tail end of this generation they would have been developing this title for the next iteration of what was coming after it as well. But that didn't happen in this case.
Yeah, I mean, everyone always says as well that Prime 4 is going to be a cross-gen game. It makes sense. It makes sense that they would do that. But also, it would make sense that Tears of the Kingdom was a cross-gen game, or Mario Wonder was a cross-gen game. We just had Metroid Prime Remastered earlier this year, showing the tech that their Retro Studios is using on the Switch. It would not shock me at all if it's not a cross-gen game. Like, it makes sense to be, but it could easily just come out on the Switch. We've already had big games like that.
what I could see happening is I think we can probably safely assume that Tears of the Kingdom DLC is coming. We'll probably hear about that early next year, maybe later this year. Well, probably later this year. And I could see potentially them doing like an ultimate complete version of Tears of the Kingdom to launch with the next iteration of the Switch or their new hardware, whatever it is, and maybe some graphical upgrades, some performance upgrades. I could see them maybe doing that, and then kind of ushering it in as a kind of a cross-gen title, but
I
disagree.
disagree.
Not really.
100%. I don't think it's a generational type of thing, not in the traditional sense. I think that we are going to see essentially all your Switch games will work on this new hardware, and that it'll be up to the developer to uncap the frame rate or do something. Basically, right now we have portable mode and docked mode when you develop a Switch game, and I think we'll have a new performance profile that developers can either opt into, or the game will just run exactly the same as it did previously. And I think that that's more of what we're going to see. I don't think that Nintendo's going to remaster these games. I don't think that they're going to do the $10 upgrade thing that Sony did between PS4 and PS5. I think it's just going to be, you throw your Tears of the Kingdom cart in and it works either the same or better. And that's really going to be what it is. I think Nintendo would be right to not muddy the waters with this, to just say it's a new Switch and it works exactly the same as the old one.
Yeah, and I see comments coming, Steve, being like, but it's Nintendo. They always sell $60 ports. I think, they had an excuse too with Wii U to Switch, completely different form factor. Mm-hmm. There's less excuse here. We are no longer on that architecture. We're no longer using discs. Like, the reasons for doing that don't make sense anymore, other than let's make money, which, maybe, but I think I'm on your side there. Yeah, just treat it like another Switch.
Right. I think Nintendo's in an interesting position where they can position the Switch in a similar way to how Apple has positioned the iPhone or the iPad, where it's like, okay, it's a new one for sure, and you can give us a few $100 for it, but everything's going to continue to work the way it has, and you just get better performance. And I don't think consoles have done a great job of doing that. And if Nintendo can be the first one to really do it, oh man, they could they could make more money than they would if they were reselling you those games.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so funny to think of Nintendo doing that, because it has been so long since their next console or handheld did not make a huge iteration from, like, ever since the GameCube, because we have the Wii with motion with their using motion controls, with the Wii U with the gamepad, 3DS with 3DS with just the fact that it is dual screen and touchscreen. So I really do hope that we do go that route and just iterate on this, not in a way where we're changing everything and adding some crazy new feature, but just continuing on with what we have and what works. If it's not broken, don't fix it, essentially.
Totally. And assuming the next hardware is an iteration on the Switch, which I think it will be. I said it before, I'll say it again. I want it so badly to be called the Super Nintendo Switch. I want that so bad. I guess the only other thing I'd mention is that I think it's also important from another angle that the next hardware is an iteration on the Switch, kind of like what you were saying, Steve. It just, all your old Switch games, they just work. And I think that's important also from a kind of an overall macro view of the Switch's library. It's the Switch's library is very special, and it's kind of unprecedented in that it has built a very robust lineup of games from pretty much every console generation. Between Nintendo Switch Online, you got the new stuff, but then you've also got like random stuff from all the generations in the middle, like the Grandia collection, for example. Like, there's some really great preservation going on, at least digitally with the Switch, and I want to see all those games carried forward 100%. To the next iteration, so people can continue to have access to some of the best games from generations past. And I love that the Switch has become a home for all these different games from different generations, and I really want to see that carried forward.
Right, like we've got every Final Fantasy game from 1 through 12.
Yeah.
We've got Metal Gear Solid coming up. Like there's so much. You can't lose all that. Every Resident Evil as well. Like, they're all there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's the only place that we're really ever getting any kind of GameCube game appearing, and we're getting more and more as time goes on.
There's a pattern. There's a pattern with GameCube now. We've got like Metroid Prime was earlier this year. Pikmin 1 and 2 just dropped. We're absolutely getting more GameCube games.
And there are like 30 Mega Man games on Switch now. So that's, that alone is a reason they got to do it. No, but yeah, seriously, I want to see that element of what makes the Switch's library so special carried forward.
Yeah. I'm glad we talked this through. It's muddied my expectations even more, though. Because I think This year, no. I think, as in no to an announcement this year, because I feel that would just damage Mario Wonder. Even if the next system is coming next year, I think if you take momentum off the Switch, that's going to hurt that game. Even if it is another Switch. But when it comes to launching and being announced in 2024, very, very possible. But I'm still kind of on that 2025 train for launching. I think the Switch has a lot of life left in it. In this iteration, which I understand is frustrating because this is a 2017 machine, we all kind of want to move on. But in terms of just their current landscape, I think it's got more time there.
Oh, wow.
I still think it's going to be late 2024. That's my prediction. I still think we're going to see the new iteration at least get announced next year, but I think announced and released personally, but maybe not until the end of the year.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that we're not getting anything before March 2024, announcement or release. I think once the fiscal year wraps, then all bets are off. And I think we'll likely get an announcement sometime around the summer for a release in November, so that they can, because Switch is losing momentum. It just is. The current hardware is losing momentum. I don't think Nintendo can make it through another holiday season with the current hardware. So I would be willing to bet that they say, hey, Switch 2 is coming. All those cool games we've released and all the ones that aren't out yet, because I guarantee you that Peach game won't be out by June.
Yeah, I feel like we're obviously not going to hear anything this year, given what we saw at this Direct, and who knows what we'll see at the September Direct, if there is one with patterns showing. But next year, I can see them announcing something next year, and either it releases that holiday season, or we might see something just early in the spring, kind of like how the Switch released in March as well. But yeah, I don't see it lasting too much longer, like no longer than 2 years. It has some life left in it still, but whether or not Nintendo wants to keep powering momentum this way, or just promote that, yeah, everything you have now, we're going to be able to play it on the next console as well, so don't worry. It's just a smart decision to do it that way, because as you guys mentioned, there's a lot of games you'd be abandoning if you just change the format and go with a completely new library, start from square one with whatever the iteration of the Switch is. So yeah, it's just the format. It's different. It's not like the PlayStation or the Xbox, where you have this portable little console that you can take with so many games you have with anywhere, and there's just a lot of novelty in that people really value after all these years.
Yeah, I mean, as Steve said earlier, all bets are off. No one knows what's actually going to happen. But I do think it's interesting that none of us expect it any earlier in 2024. We've also sort of said holiday or later, which would mean like Switch does have like a full 2024 left, which is another year on its own. But in that, like, there's still a lot of potential to put the Switch out there, because the library with 3DS was slowly dwindling out towards the end. We got a lot of remasters, a lot of lower effort games, and there's still room for that with the Switch. Like we can still get a bunch more GameCube ports, like F-Zero GX or Wind Waker HD or Twilight Princess HD. Those, like, even though they're ports, Wind Waker and Twilight Princess are big games. Like Twilight Princess HD, Skyward Sword HD sold like 4 million units. Wind Waker can top that, I think.
I think Wind Waker and Twilight Princess could be sitting in a very comfortable spot where it could be advertised being for Switch or for the next console as well, and you can just play them on both.
Yeah.
But yeah, things like Mario Wonder, we have 2D Mario on the Switch. We have Mario Maker, and we have Wii U Deluxe on there as well. But they're very different titles. Like, they're very different from what we're seeing for Wonder. And to promote that, especially after the Mario movie, is just their smartest move. And yeah, just having Wonder out and then a completely new system would just not be the correct move to make, honestly.
And that the best lesson from Switch's launch is you need software for that entire year. Switch had Mario Kart, had Odyssey, it had Zelda, it had Xenoblade. It was just back-to-back Splatoon, back-to-back games all the time. Right now, 3D Mario Kart, Solidify, they're absolutely coming that first year. I think you probably need a bit more time to get another Splatoon or another Animal Crossing or another Xenoblade or just something along those lines, because they're still so recent in their releases. But if we're talking late 2024, early 2025, they'll probably be ready by then.
You know, and this is a topic mainly for a different discussion, but I don't know that I fully believe that Mario Kart might be coming in that first year, because I just don't even know where they go with Mario Kart from a 96-track game. going forward. I don't know if they'll be quite ready to have that figured out by the Switch 2s or whatever the successor's first year.
I disagree. They've had a decade to think about
Yeah,
it.
you know, so
I was going to say,
Well, no, they have.
It's been a long time
No, I
since they
know.
last made a Mario Kart game.
They had a roadmap somewhere.
I
for this-
no,
for
I mean I
this
know
game.
they've had a long time. I just mean like I don't know what they could do
Right.
going from a 96 track game to they can't do the whole 4 new tracks, 4 retro or sorry 4 new cups, 4 retro
I'm
cups
gonna
thing again. They
I'm
just
gonna put on
can't.
my tinfoil
So-
hat and say Mario Kart 9 has existed for a long time internally. I think that
I think it has to.
Fair.
that
yeah.
they've
I'm sure they
figured
have a
that out
concept
and they've built it
bouncing
already.
around.
They just realized Mario Kart 8's been
They're just
printing
waiting.
money. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you
I
think
do
it
agree, though.
matters
Oh.
to match those big numbers? Because like obviously it's unreasonable to expect that Mario Kart 9 will have 100
No.
tracks. Do you think it matters as like a main? If you're just a casual person, is it more valuable to have a new Mario Kart built from the ground up that doesn't come from 2014 than it is to match the
Right.
content of that game? Like, I
don't
honestly
think
I
it
don't know.
needs to-
What do you think?
I don't think it needs to match it, but I don't think that they can fall back on the usual 4 new cups, 4 retro cups, no real meaningful single player content, you know, kind of average online play. I think that they've got to have a little bit more than that going. I mean, it's still Mario Kart. It's going to sell no matter what. I just feel like to really catch on to the more hardcore audience, it's going to have to offer something a little bit more out of the gate than what we've typically seen, especially because that audience will have been, by now, well attuned to a game with so much content, and a game that 10 years on is holding up shockingly well. So it's just it's interesting. It's kind of it's in an interesting place, kind of like Smash, and I'm very curious to see where it goes from here. But of course, that's digging into the weeds of a different discussion a little bit.
Yeah, I think instead of bringing back all these tracks that like, what do you do from here? There's so much already that Mario Kart 8 has done. So instead of just bringing a lot of that back, just kind of lean more into other Nintendo properties. I know people talk about this all the time, but you can still make it mainly Mario Kart, but just add a more emphasis on other Nintendo properties that you've already kind of dipped into with Mario Kart 8, with Zelda, with Splatoon, with
Smash
Animal
Kart,
Crossing.
Nintendo
Fully
Kart,
agree.
yeah.
Like, just make tracks that are just based on all these other properties that you have. You could add your
I love
Kirby, you
that.
could have your Star Fox, you could have your Metroid, and just basically it's still Mario Kart. Like, it's still at its core. It's gonna be like a Mario Kart Superstars kind of situation. That'd be a way to kind of promote it. But yeah, because like it's hard to say how to keep going forward. Just take a different turn with it. Because like we don't know what's gonna happen with Smash either. Like, well, are they gonna do a ultimate edition when the
Yeah.
new Switch comes out instead with all the
knows?
DLC packed in, or
Yeah.
we don't know what we're gonna do
Yeah.
with that. Because we have two situations of these like ultimate compilations with Mario Kart and Smash, and it's like, well, where do you go from here? Honestly,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
gotta go a different direction entirely.
I saw some in live audience say Street Fighter has dealt with this, and it has. Street Fighter 4 had a huge cast. 6, not so much compared to it, but it's sort of balancing that quality rather than quantity. I think that
Yeah.
can completely resonate and land. But we can, like, Ash was saying, Mario Kart could be its own discussion. That's a
Exactly.
Huge, okay,
Yeah,
don't talk about that anymore. You
Yeah.
can go on forever about that.
I'm sorry.
But I hope at the very least we have maybe changed, not changed expectations, but maybe added a bit more to the discussion, because I think everyone's just kind of thinking the success is coming up immediately.
Yeah.
And maybe necessarily it doesn't have to. Maybe there is still time in there. But I do hope that we are not on 2017 hardware for that much longer.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
it's true.
Although, you know what? I mean, it's 2017 hardware that still blows me away. I
Yeah.
played like 5 hours of Tears of the Kingdom on a flight recently, and it still just... It blows my brain. It breaks my brain that you can have a game the size and scale of Tears of the Kingdom in such a small, thin, handheld format, and it looks and performs as well as it does. Obviously, no, it's not 60 FPS, 1080p on a hand. No, but it still looks and runs so well for what it is on such a small factor. And I don't know. The Nintendo are wizards. I don't know how they did it, how they do it, and I can't wait to see the crossroads of the tech that they put into the successor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the big takeaway is just live in the moment right now. Stop. Like,
Yeah.
with Switch Pro, we spent like half the Switch era being like, oh, come on, give us the Pro. And just take it as it comes. We've got a lot of cool games coming. We're not suffering.
I quit the Switch Pro discussion years ago at this point. I just go with what we have right now, because games like Tears of the Kingdom, Metroid Prime Remastered, they continue to amaze me with what they can do with the Switch this many years in. And yeah, I mean, it doesn't always take like amazing fidelity. Sometimes it just takes like really great art style, like Mario Wonder.
Yeah.
It looks incredible with what they're doing with that art style, and it doesn't need to have 4K resolution to impress me.
Yeah.
So
Right. And, at the end of the day, you know what? We all know that they can't have a Switch or a hardware without a Rhythm Heaven game. So they can't. They're not allowed to release the next one until Rhythm Heaven gets here. So until that happens...
It could be
yeah.
the time.
Oh, dear.
I mean, that's a wind-down game, absolutely. It wasn't 3DS. But yeah, let's wrap up now. Thank you for watching, everybody. If you've noticed that live audience bubble in the corner, you could be one of them by supporting us on patreon.com/GVGaming. You get a ton of cool perks, including early access to videos days before they go live on YouTube. You can also contribute to GVGcast and do a ton more bonus things, including playing with us in our EP squads, which we do twice every month. So, thank you so much. Daniel, closing words.
how dare you do this to me, Don?